Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's Mincy, and today we're going to be bringing you the Resto Shaman Pre-Raid Phase 1 Gearing Guide, Stat Prio, and Talent Build. For this one, I did add in gems, consumables, enchantments that should all be available in Phase 1, and what professions you should take. So enough rambling by me, let's go ahead and jump into the stat priorities based on EP values. So here's the stat priority for Resto Shaman. It is MP5 over healing power over spell crit, which is equal to intellect. Many people will tell you that spell crit is better than intellect, but considering that the fights are so fast, it's probably best to keep those two. Those could be your optional switch arounds. I personally would be putting spell crit over intellect, but that would be my own opinion. This is based on the EP values that we have gathered through private server data and from data back in the day. So this is a typical talent tree for Resto Shamans. This has very high heal output and it also has threat reduction. Now if you did want to farm with a spec that you could heal into entry level tier 4 raids, you would put a few points into elemental and take a few points out of the restoration tree. Feel free to pause the video and take advantage of this talent tree and try it out. Let me know down in the comments below if you have a different talent tree. I'm always open to test new talent trees out. So these are the gem options you have available as a Resto Shaman. Now typically in pre-raid BIS or in phase 1 pre-raid, you will not be using the meta gem slot. Now if you do, you need 2 blue, 2 red, and 2 yellow, I believe. To obtain this, you can use a few of each of them. Generally speaking, you will be stacking your red right there, the Teardrop Living Ruby. That's going to be 18 healing and 6 spell damage. Now, if you had any of the other options, I would also check into if the gear has MP5 rating. You might want to put that value over some of the healing. It all breaks down to EP rating. This is a list of consumables that a Resto Shaman could and would use. There's the Elixir of Healing Power, Elixir of Draconic Wisdom. Now you do need to remember that flasks are both a battle and a guardian elixir, so just keep that in mind. We do have an option as Resto Shamans to use the Flask of Mighty Restoration. A lot of people will use this because it does persist through death. There are 2 options for your weapon buffs. There is Superior Mana Oil and Brilliant Mana Oil. Potions generally are going to be super mana potions. Your food is probably going to be the golden fish sticks. Now this is just going to require the golden darters, which comes from the cooking profession. And if you did grind through classic just a wee bit and you have some dark runes and demonic runes, that is also an option if you are running low on potions. But do keep in mind that it does cost life. So here we have some of the enchants. We have the head, the cloak, the shoulder, the bracer, and the chest. So for the head slot, you have the Glyph of Renewal. That is very massive. It gives you 35 to healing, as well as 12 spell damage and 7 MP5. The cloak you'll want Subtlety just because of the 2% threat drop, or the 2% decrease of threat. Let me say that correctly. Then for the shoulder, it's all based on what you go, Aldor or Scyer. I believe the Aldor is stronger, but based on how your professions lay out and what you specifically choose. There are videos. I can link a video down below from Scottejaye explaining Aldor and Scyer for just about every class, so don't forget to look down in the link below. But we have the Greater Inscription of Faith and the Greater Inscription of the Oracle. Both are very solid, and it's going to be your shoulder slot enchant. Down going to the bracers, we have Enchant Bracer Superior Healing, and then we have Restore Mana Prime. Now depending on if you're lacking a little bit in the healing category, this is a little bit stronger based on EP values. This would be your 30, whereas even doubling Mana P5, that is only 12 for the EP value. So you would probably stick with the Superior Healing on the bracers. For the chest, we would be using the Restore Mana Prime, and that's very solid with 6 MP5. The second round of enchants, even though it's really the first round of enchants, but the second page I have for enchants is enchant gloves, legs, boots, and weapon with your shield. If you have a shield, generally you will, but if you have another offhand, then you will not be using the shield enchant. So we have major healing on the gloves. That is 35 increased healing to the gloves and 12 spell damage. Then for the golden spell thread, that's going to go on your legs. That comes from tailoring. Increases healing by up to 66 and spell damage by up to 22 and stamina by 20. So if I'm correct, what you could do if you do not have a tailor, you do it as if you had an enchantment. So just remember, you can do all the mats except for the primal, because the actual tailor themselves will have to go through the heroic dungeon and kill the last boss, or I believe it is one of the bosses, to get the primal. You will not be able to provide the primal for the recipe that is bind on pickup. So for boots, you probably will be going vitality in the earlier stages, just because fights aren't as movement intensive in tier 4 entry level raids. Later on, you might be switching over to the boar speed, so keep that in mind. Generally, you will replace your boots through tier 4 in Karazhan, rules, and mags. Then we'll go down to the weapon. We have major healing on the weapon. That's plus 81 healing. That is pretty massive. And then the shield, we're going to enchant with intellect. So for professions as a Resto Shaman, there are a few options. I chose 3 here, but there is many more. You could go into skinning, you could go into alchemy and herbalism, just for cutting down cost on your mana potions. But for the sake of this guide, I would recommend going enchanting and potentially leatherworking. Now, some of your Bistless pieces are going to come from tailoring that are bind on pickup, so that is another reason why I tossed that in there. But obviously, enchanting is big for your rings. Leatherworking, not just for the drums of battle. There are sets that you can get from leatherworking that are very useful and also come into your Bistless. So let's get into the actual items that you will be using as a Resto Shaman. For the head slot, we have a few options. There is the White Mend Hood, which is very, very useful, has a few gem slots. We have the preset, the Hollowed Crown. A lot of healers are going to be using this. It's going to be in a lot of Bistless that you see from healers as well. And then we have the Leatherworking Living Dragon Scale Helmet. Now for the Hollowed Crown, that is going to drop off of Harbinger, Skyrus, and Arcatraz. Like I said, if you're healing, generally you're not going to have another priest in there with you, but that's a set that if you don't have leatherworking and you just so happen to not have tailoring, that is a solid option to choose. So we have a few options for the next slot. Obviously there's a quest, there's something that drops in dungeons, and then there's something that we can get from badges. Generally speaking, I would probably recommend the dungeon drop, the Necklace of Resplendent Hope. Now this is going to come from Epoch Hunter in Old Hillsbred Foothills Heroic. This might not be easy. This is something that a lot of people struggle with tank wise. Your best bet is probably going for the quest item and hoping for the best when you go into Old Hillsbred Foothills Heroic. Natasha's Guardian Cord comes from the Houndmaster quest. And then we have the Badges Necklace, which costs 25 badges, the Necklace of Eternal Hope. Generally, you're going to want to spend your badges elsewhere, but if you're running heroics like a madman in the first week, you might have so many badges you don't know what to do with, so that's another option if you haven't completed the quest. So shoulders, pretty straightforward. If you have tailoring, you're going to be using the Primal Moonclaw shoulders, but if you don't, because these are bind on pickup, you will not be able to get them. The Dungeon Mantle of Seawolf is what I would most likely sought after myself, just because it has the MP5 and it has stronger healing values than the Hollowed Pauldrons. But if you just so happen to get the Hollowed Pauldrons to drop in Shadow Labyrinth off of Grandmaster Vorpal, then go for those until you get the Mantle of the Seawolf. The Mantle of the Seawolf drops off of Manitomb's Heroic, Kavarok. So for the Cloak, we have a few options here. There's a few that you're going to be able to get potentially off of a drop or off the auction house. Just do keep in mind that some might not be worth it and might be replaced relatively quick in tier 4 in the entry level raids. But we do have one that is pretty attainable, I believe. That is the Cloak from Heroic Ramparts off of the Watchkeeper. So then you've got the White Remedy Cape. That's going to be a BOE tailoring pattern. And then the Life-Giving Cloak, which arguably is the strongest on here, is going to be an auction house purchase. It is not a tailoring pattern, it is a drop in the world. For the chest, we have a few options as well. With some diversity, we have the tailoring set, the Primal Moonclaw set, That's a bindsman picked up, so if you don't have tailoring, completely ignore that one. If you do, then that would be your option. I would save up for your cooldowns if you don't have a bunch of tailoring alts. We do have the Priest Hollowed Garments. You're going to see that Hollowed Garment set repeat a lot. The set bonuses do nothing for you, but the absolute healing output that you get from them and the gem slots could be useful for you as a Resto Shaman. But if you do just so happen to have a blacksmithing friend, or you have a blacksmithing alt that you've leveled up and you are staying in concurrent with everything, there is the Earth Beast Breastplate, which is very solid, has a nice chunk of MP5 on it, as well as a stronger healing output than the dungeon set. The Hollowed Garments are going to be coming from Shadow Labyrinth off of Murmur, so you're going to be going in there for the Gara attunement anyways, so that's just an option that I gave. We've got a few options for the wrist slot for you here. We have the Keepers of Time, Exalted Bracers, the Bindings of the Time Walker. There is the Primal Surge Bracers that drop off Eunice in Black Morass, and then we do have the Bands of the Benevolent off of Talon King Ikis in Sethic Hall's Heroic. Generally speaking, if we're going by ease of availability, it's probably going to be the Bindings of the Time Walker and the Primal Surge Bracers. Moving over to the hand slot, we have a few options from dungeons. We have the Prismatic Mittens of Mending, we have the Fathom Heart Gauntlets, and then we have the Bloody Surgeon's Mitts. Generally speaking, the Bloody Surgeon's Mitts only have viability because of the gem slots. It does have decent amount of healing, but as you can see, the other options on this list have more healing output and actually have MP5. Now, the Prismatic Mittens of Mending are going to be dropping off of Commander Serenus in Botanica, and then the Fathom Heart Gauntlets are coming from Steamvault's Warlord Calithresh, and then we have the Bloody Surgeon's Mitts, which are going to be coming from Blood Furnace Bragak. I've said it once, I've said it again. If you have tailoring, you're going to be going with the Primal Mooncloth belt as well to complete your set. Obviously, if this is your third piece in the set, this is going to allow 5% of your mana regeneration to continue while casting. This is going to be very useful for you as a Resto Shaman. But if you did not go with this option, there is the Cord of Sanctification that comes from a dungeon and the Stillwater Girdle. Generally speaking, the Stillwater Girdle has a little bit more MP5 but lacks the healing power. The Stillwater Girdle comes from Manitomb's Heroic off the Nexus Prince Shafar, but the Cord of Sanctification is going to be a difficult one to obtain, obviously because it is Old Hillsbrad Foothills, the Epoch Hunter, and this is going to be coming from Heroic. Now for the leg slot, you've got a few options. Obviously, if you have the White Mane Hood, this completes the set. I've said it once, I'll say it again. Tailoring does have some very viable stats when it comes to healing. This set right here is going to increase healing by up to 10% of your total intellect. This is the situation where in stat prio, I would put intellect over spell crit just for that reason, because it would bring up your EP value of your healing output. But let's not get into that. There's quite a bit of gems in that. There's also gems in the Pontifex Kilt. This has a little bit more healing output than the Tailoring White Men Pants, but there is the BOE World Dropped, the Carillion Skirt. Now, you do have to remember with BOE World Drops, they could be very expensive and not worth it, whereas the other two options might not be as expensive. And generally speaking, the White Men Pants are going to last you for a lot longer than pre-raid Biss. Moving on to the boots, we have a few options here as well. We have the Wave Fury boots that are going to be coming from Slave Pen's Heroic off of Rockmar the Crackler. This is probably what I would be choosing personally, but then you also have the Jeweled Boots of Sanctification that come from Shattered Halls off of Warbringer. And then we also have the Mechanar Heroic, Pantheon, the Calculator that drops the Boots of the Pious. Now, the Boots of the Pious have the higher healing output in this situation, but do lack the MP5. Just keep that in mind. Sliding down to the rings, we have the Cosmic Life Band, the Celestial Jewel Ring, the Band of Halos, Band of the Crystalline Void as well. Now, two of these come from a dungeon, one from a quest, and then we do have the badges. Now the badges ring comes from the vendor in Shatrath. It is going to be 25 badges. Does have a solid healing output, but it is beaten by most of the other rings. It does have MP5 as well, but the MP5 values aren't as great as some of the other rings as well. Band of the Crystalline Void, that is going to be coming off of the Mana Tombs Yor. He is a summoned boss, and it is a 2% drop rate, as well as being a heroic. But this is not a availability bis list. This is best in slot generally. Now the Cosmic Life Band is going to be the easiest, most likely, as it's coming from Mechanar, the Nethermancer, Sepatheria. And then we do have the quest, the Celestial Jewel Ring. That is going to be coming from the quest, hitting the Mother Lode. Now if I'm going to be choosing rings, I'm going to be choosing the top two, the Cosmic Life Band and the Celestial Jewel Ring, as that's going to be the easiest, but like I said, best in slot is probably going to be a mix of the Band of the Crystalline Void and the Cosmic Life Band. We've got a few options as well for trinkets. Now, there is a little bit of stipulation between this one. If you wanted to, you could stack 2 Lower City Prayer Books. Do remember they do share the same cooldown. The Lower City Prayer Book is going to be Lower City Reputation Revered. The Scarab of Infinite Cycle, which comes off of Black Morassianus. And then we do have a Badges Essence of the Martyr. This is going to be very solid because it increases your healing done by spells up to 297 and damage done by spells up to 99 for 20 seconds. It's going to be really great for very high damage output parts of the fight. And I did toss in, if you are jewel crafting, there is the figurine Talisite Owl. This is going to restore MP5 at all times, but also could be used as a miniature mana potion. Later on, there will be a bind on pickup alchemy, the Alchemist Stone. But like I said, this is pre-raid bis. We won't be seeing that trinket until later tier 5 or tier 6, I believe, actually, into the later phases of the game. We've got a little bit of diversity in the main hand, most of them being maces. Now, if you've ever played a Resto Shaman, if you played back in the day, there is a great chance you had the Essence Focuser. This is going to be a BOE world drop. It's going to be dropping off in Shadowmoon Valley, I believe. 9 times out of 10, you're going to want this going into a dungeon. But if you do have the Reputation, the Gavel of the Pure Light from the Shatar Exalted is another option to save down on cost. You do lose MP5 compared, but you do gain increased healing. There is the BOE Ancient Scepter of Sun Min. This is going to be another BOE world drop / auction house item. Now, like I said, cost efficient versus time spent. This is going to go into how you go about your bis list. There is also another option, the Shockwave Truntron. This is going to have the most high healing output, but the lowest MP5 value out of all of these options. If I was to choose, I would be going the Essence Focuser. Ah yes, the Crystal Pulse Shield. Every paladin's going to want it, and so are you. This is going to be a massive shield that generally, like I said, if you've ever played Resto Shaman, you're walking into Karazhan with this shield on. There is another option, is the Light Bearer's Face Shield, but that's going to be from the badge vendor. We do have the Tears of Heaven. That is going to be from the badge vendor as well, and that's going to cost 25 badges. Same MP5 value, but has higher healing value than the Crystal Pulse Shield. We do have the Swamplight Lantern. Now the Swamplight Lantern is going to be from Slavepen's Heroic off of Quag. And then we have Fel's Signet of Cleansing. This is going to have the most MP5 value out of the offhands that you have in pre-raid. And that's going to come from Rampart's Heroic off of Amar the Unscarred. There's 2 totems that I generally know off the top of my head that you're going to want to go with. You'd actually arguably want to switch one out for certain specific fights. You will be swapping out the Totem of the Plains in certain fights where you will be using lesser Healing Wave more than you will be using Healing Wave. But generally speaking, there is the Totem of Spontaneous Regrowth that has 88 increase onto the Healing Wave. That is going to be coming from Slavepen's Heroic, Manu the Betrayer. And then the quest item Totem of the Plains is coming from the Ultimate Bloodsport. Like I said, you're probably going to want to do the quest just for the Totem of the Plains regardless, but when you do pick up the dungeon Totem of Spontaneous Growth, it's probably going to sit in your totem slot for a lot more than the Totem of the Plains. And that's it, guys. Thank you for watching. If you found this useful, don't forget to subscribe and hit that ring bell. It gives you a notification when I have any more gearing guides coming out. I would like to give a big shout out to our guild Resto Shaman TJ for giving me the EP values and helping me go through the BIS list and what he personally would choose. That helped me out a ton. Shout out TJ, my boy. Real quick, I am streaming on Twitch. I'm going to be streaming the launch. I'm going to have my link of my Twitch, MincyTTV, in the description below. We're going to have a bunch of fun. It's going to be me, Scottejaye, Redzy TV, Florino, and then we've got the wild and courageous Zach at the end, too. Can't forget about Zach. He eats cereal with whiskey. It's something. It's a delight. You guys will all see it. You guys will all love it. And until the next time, take it easy.